The modern world tells you, be open, give people a chance, trusting others takes courage. But for 300,000 years, the opposite was true. The human who trusted a stranger too quickly died. The human who hesitated survived. How many times have you silenced that first instinct, that quiet little voice saying, I am not sure about this, and later regretted it? That voice is not your weakness, and that hesitation is still in you, in every unfamiliar face, at the beginning of every new relationship. There is someone standing at the edge of the firelight. You noticed them 3 minutes ago, before anyone else did. Something shifted in the ambient sound, a slight change in the way the birds had gone quiet, a different texture to the darkness at the tree line, and your eyes moved there before you consciously decided to look. The figure hasn't moved, hasn't spoken, hasn't done anything threatening, just standing, watching, and everything in your body is already running the calculation. Not you, not the conscious, rational, self-aware version of you that reads articles about giving people the benefit of the doubt. The older version, the one that runs underneath thought, the one that has been running this particular calculation for so long that the results come back before you even know you've asked the question. Threat unknown, unknown is threat, proceed with caution. This is where we begin, not with philosophy, not with research, with that feeling, the one you have learned to be ashamed of, the one that modern culture has spent considerable effort convincing you is a problem to be solved rather than a system to be understood. The suspicion you feel when you meet someone new, the slight withholding, the part of you that smiles and engages and participates while another part sits back, watching, gathering data, reserving judgment. The inner voice that says, wait, not yet, you don't know this person, not really. You have been told this voice is fear, that it is the residue of bad experiences, or an anxious attachment style, or a defensive pattern that a better version of you would have worked through by now. What if it isn't any of those things? What if it is the single most important survival tool your species ever developed, running exactly as it was designed to run, in a world that no longer understands what it was designed for? Here is what we have been told about trust, that it is a virtue, that it is the foundation of every meaningful relationship, that the capacity to trust, to open, to extend, to risk, is a marker of psychological health and emotional maturity, that the person who holds back, who withholds, who needs time and evidence before they let someone in, that person is damaged, guarded, closed. This is one of the most biologically ahistorical ideas ever to achieve mainstream acceptance. For the vast majority of human existence, the capacity to trust the wrong person, quickly, openly, without sufficient evidence, was not a mark of psychological health. It was cause of death. Let me show you what the world actually looked like for the humans who built the nervous system you are running right now. You are not living in a city of millions. You are connected to thousands of strangers through screens. You are in a group of 30 people. You have known every single one of them your entire life. You were born surrounded by these faces. You learn to read them before you learn to speak. You know which ones are reliable under pressure, which ones take slightly more than their share when they think no one is watching, which ones you would trust with your children, and which ones you would not. This is the social world your brain was calibrated for. 30 people, known, mapped, understood. And then occasionally, irregularly, unpredictably, someone appeared from outside that circle. A stranger, not a stranger in the modern sense, not someone you pass on the street or sit next to on public transport and simply don't know yet. A stranger in the oldest sense. Someone from outside, someone whose history you didn't know, whose group you couldn't verify, whose motivations were completely opaque. In that context, what was the appropriate response? Not openness, not welcome, not the immediate extension of trust that modern culture celebrates as virtue. Caution, watchful, patient, evidence-gathering caution, the kind that didn't commit until it had enough data, the kind that smiled without revealing too much, the kind that kept a certain distance, not hostile, not aggressive, just maintained, held, the way you hold something you're not yet sure is safe. The humans who extended trust too quickly to strangers, who opened before they had sufficient evidence, who assumed benign intent without verification, they encountered something your genes remember even if your conscious mind has forgotten. Not every stranger was dangerous. Most weren't. But enough were at the cost of trusting the wrong one, too fast, too completely, that cost was often catastrophic and irreversible. The humans who waited, who watched, who gathered evidence before committing, who maintained that slight, careful, socially acceptable distance the data came in, those humans made it to the next season more reliably than the ones who didn't. You are the descendant of the ones who waited. In 1992, anthropologist Robin Dunbar published research that would eventually become one of the most cited ideas in the study of human social behavior. Dunbar was studying the relationship between brain size and social group size across primate species. The pattern he found was remarkably consistent. The larger the neocortex relative to the rest of the brain, the larger and more complex the social groups the species maintained. When he applied this formula to humans, he arrived at a number, 150. 150, what researchers now call Dunbar's number, represents the approximate cognitive limit of meaningful social relationships a human brain can maintain simultaneously. Not acquaintances, not followers, not connections. Meaningful relationships, the kind where you know the person's history, their reliability, their tendencies, their position in the social network. 150 people. Think about how many people you technically know, how many faces you recognize, how many names you have access to, how many people have some window into your life through some digital platform, professional network, or social context. For most people living in cities in the modern world, this number runs into the thousands, sometimes tens of thousands. Your brain was not built to process thousands of trust calculations simultaneously. It was built to process 150, and it was built to process those 150 people slowly, carefully, over years of shared experience and accumulated evidence. What happens when you ask a system built for 150 people to navigate a world of millions, and to do it quickly, optimistically, and without the kind of sustained observation that trust actually requires? The system does not upgrade. It cannot upgrade. It runs the old code in the new environment and produces results that feel, from the outside, like anxiety, like guardedness, like an inability to connect. But what it actually is a precision instrument being asked to do something it was never designed to do. There is a specific piece of archaeological evidence I want to take you to, because it changes everything about how we understand ancient human social behavior, and by extension, our own. In 2010, researchers studying burial sites across multiple Paleolithic locations in Europe and the Middle East noticed a pattern in the skeletal remains that had been long overlooked. Among the individuals buried with particular care, with grave goods, with ochre, with deliberate positioning, there was a disproportionate number of what researchers call non-local individuals, people who, based on the isotopic analysis of their teeth and bones, had not grown up in the area where they were buried, people who had come from somewhere else. Think about what this means. These individuals, strangers originally to the groups that buried them, had been integrated fully enough into the community that when they died, they were given the same careful, deliberate farewell as the people who had been born there, the same ochre, the same grave goods, the same positioning that researchers associate with belief in an afterlife or continued existence. They had moved from stranger to kin. But this didn't happen overnight. The isotopic evidence tells us these individuals had lived in their adopted communities for years, sometimes decades. The trust had been built the way the old system required it to be built, slowly, through presence, through accumulation, through the kind of time that modern life rarely affords and rarely values. This is the part that most people miss when they talk about ancient human social behavior. The ancient system wasn't closed. It wasn't permanently suspicious. It wasn't designed to keep strangers out forever. It was designed to keep them out long enough to gather the evidence required to bring them in safely. The goal was never distrust. The goal was verified trust. Trust that had been tested. Trust that had been earned through repeated interaction, through demonstrated reliability, through the slow accumulation of evidence that this person, this particular person, was someone whose behavior you could predict. Now think about what modern life asks of you instead. You start a new job. Within days, you are expected to be a full team member, collaborative, open, sharing information and creative ideas with people you have known for a week. The social architecture of the workplace demands a performance of trust that your nervous system has not had time to actually build. You go on a date. The cultural script says, be open, Be vulnerable, be authentic, share the real version of yourself with someone you met 72 hours ago through an app. You join a community, online, in person, professional, social. The norm says trust the group, assume good faith, open up, and your nervous system, running the old calibration, is producing the same gentle signal. Wait, you don't know these people yet, not really, and you override it, because the modern world has taught you that overriding it is growth. But here is what the override costs you. Not every time, not catastrophically every time, but consistently, across years, across interactions, across the accumulated weight of opening before the evidence was there, the override costs you something you can feel but rarely name. Kind of chronic low-level vigilance. A background hum of social uncertainty. The sense that you are slightly off balance in most of your relationships, not because something is wrong with those relationships, but because you have been moving faster than your evidence base supports. You know things about people that you haven't yet had time to verify. You have committed levels of openness that your data doesn't yet justify. And some part of you, the old part, the patient part, is still back there, still watching, still waiting for the pattern to complete. Here is what I want you to take from this. The caution you feel when you meet someone new is not a wound. It is not the residue of past betrayal, or the symptom of an attachment disorder, or the evidence of emotional unavailability. It is the most sophisticated social technology your species ever developed, running exactly as it was designed to run, in a world that has changed faster than the technology can adapt. The people who matter to you most, the ones you trust completely, the ones you would call at 3 a.m., the ones whose reliability you don't question, how did you come to trust them? Not in a week, not through vulnerability exercises or authenticity workshops, through time. Through the slow, patient, repeated accumulation of evidence that they were who said they were. Through watching how they behaved when things were difficult. Through seeing, again and again, that the person they showed you on good days was the same person who showed up on bad ones. That is the ancient system completing itself. That is verified trust, the only kind that the old wiring fully accepts. I'm not telling you to close, to never extend trust before it is fully earned. The modern world requires a level of social faith that the ancient world never demanded, and navigating it means operating with some degree of optimistic assumption. But I am telling you this. The inner voice that says wait, the one you have been taught to override, to dismiss, to work through as though it were a limitation, that voice is not your fear talking. That is 300,000 years of pattern recognition. It has seen this before. It is looking at something specific, and it is asking not for permanent closure, but for the one thing it was always designed to require: time, evidence, proof, not distrust, not suspicion, patience. The non-local individuals buried with ochre and grave goods, the strangers who became kin, they weren't welcomed in a day. They weren't trusted in a week. They earned their place in the circle through years of showing up, of contributing, of being the same person in winter they had been in summer. And when they died, the group that buried them knew something true about them. Not assumed, not hoped, known. That is the only trust the old system fully accepts, and maybe, it is the only trust worth having. The voice that says wait is not your damage, it is your inheritance. The next time you feel it, that slight, careful withholding, that patient gathering of evidence before you commit, don't rush to override it, don't pathologize it, don't apologize for it, just let it do what it was built to do. Watch, wait, let the pattern complete. The people worth trusting will still be there when the evidence is in. See you in the next one.